Hi, it's Sidney Kean with Chapter 11, Part 2 of Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. When they had gone another 100 yards, they saw at the end of the path, in the middle of the fields, a nice little straw hut with a roof of tiles and bricks. "That hut must be inhabited by someone," said Pinocchio. "Let us go and knock at the door." So they went and knocked. "Who is there?" said a little voice from within. "We are a poor father and son without bread and without a roof," answered the puppet. "Turn the key and the door will open," said the same little voice. Pinocchio turned the key and the door opened. They went in, looked here, there and everywhere, and they couldn't see anyone. "Oh, where is the master of the house?" said Pinocchio, much surprised. "Here I am, up here." The father and son looked immediately up to the ceiling, and there on a beam they saw... What do you think they saw? The talking cricket. "Oh, my dear little cricket," said Pinocchio, bowing politely to him. "Ah, now you call me your dear little cricket. But do you remember the time when you threw the handle of a hammer at me to drive me from your house?" "You are right, cricket. Drive me away also, but have pity on my poor papa." "I will have pity on both father and son, but I wish to remind you of the ill treatment I received from you to teach you that in this world, when it is possible, we should show courtesy to everybody if we wish it to be extended to us in our hour of need." "You are right, cricket. You are so right, and I will bear in mind the lesson you have given me. But tell me, how did you manage to buy this beautiful hut?" "This hut was given to me yesterday by a goat whose wool was of beautiful blue color." "And where has she gone, the goat?" asked Pinocchio with lively curiosity. I do not know." "And when will it come back?" "It will never come back. It went away yesterday in great grief and bleating. It seemed to say, 'Meh, poor Pinocchio, I shall never set him more. I shall never see him again. By this time the dogfish must have devoured him.'" "Did it really say that? Then it was she. It was my dear little fairy!" exclaimed Pinocchio, crying and sobbing. When he had cried for some time, he dried his eyes and prepared a comfortable bed of straw for Geppetto to lie down upon. Then he asked the cricket, "Tell me, little cricket, where can I find a tumbler of milk for my poor papa?" "3 fields off from here there lives a gardener called Gianjo, who keeps cows. Go to him and you will get the milk you are in want of." Pinocchio ran all the way to Gianjo's house, and the gardener asked him, "How much milk do you want?" "I want a tumblerful." "A tumbler of milk costs a halfpenny. Begin by giving me the halfpenny." "I have not even a farthing," replied Pinocchio, grieved and mortified. "That is bad, puppet. If you have not even a farthing, I have not even a drop of milk." "I must have patience," said Pinocchio, and he turned to go. "Wait a little," said Gianjo. "We can come to an arrangement together. Will you undertake to turn my pumping machine?" "What is a pumping machine?" "It is a wooden pole which serves to draw up the water from the cistern to water the vegetables." "You can try me." "Well then, If you will draw 100 buckets of water, I will give you in compensation a tumbler of milk. It's a bargain. Gielgud led Pinocchio to the kitchen garden and taught him how to turn the pumping machine. Pinocchio immediately began to work, but before he had drawn up the 100 buckets of water, the perspiration was pouring from his head to his feet. "Up until now," said the gardener, "the labor of turning the pumping machine was performed by my little donkey, but the poor animal is dying." "Will you take me to see him?" "Willingly." When Pinocchio went into the stable, he saw a beautiful little donkey stretched on the straw, worn out from hunger and overwork. After looking at him, he said to himself, "I am sure I know this little donkey. His face, it's not new to me." And bending over, he asked him in asinine language, that's E-R language, "Who are you?" At this, the little donkey opened his dying eyes and answered in broken words in the same language, "E-R, I am Candlewick." And having again closed his eyes, he expired. "Oh, poor Candlewick," said Pinocchio in a low voice, and taking a handful of straw, he dried a tear that was rolling down his face. "Do you grieve for a donkey that cost you nothing?" said the gardener. "What it must be to me who bought him for ready money." I must tell you, he was my friend." "Your friend?"
"One of my schoolfellows."
How?" shouted Gielgud, laughing loudly. "How had you donkeys for schoolfellows? I can imagine what wonderful studies you must have made."
The puppet, who felt much mortified at these words, did not answer. But taking his tumbler of milk, still quite warm, he returned to the hut. And from that day, for more than 5 months, he continued to get up at daybreak every morning to go and turn the pumping machine to earn the tumbler of milk. Nor was he satisfied with this, for during the time that he had over, he learned to make hampers and baskets of rushes, and with the money he obtained by selling them, he was able with great economy to provide for all the daily expenses. Among other things, he constructed an elegant little wheelchair in which he could take his father out on fine days to breathe a mouthful of fresh air. By his industry, ingenuity, and his anxiety to work and to overcome difficulties, he not only succeeded in maintaining his father, who continued infirm in comfort, but he also strived to put aside 40 pence to buy himself a new coat. One morning, he said to his father, "Papa, I am going to buy a new coat, a jacket, a cap, and a new pair of shoes for myself. When I return," he added, laughing, "I shall be so well dressed that you will take me for a fine gentleman." And leaving the house, he began to run merrily and happily along. All at once, he heard himself called by name, and turning round, he saw a small, big snail crawling from the hedge. "Do you know me?" asked the snail. "It seems to me, and yet I am not sure." "Do you remember the snail who was lady's maid to the fairy with the blue hair? Do you not remember the time when I came downstairs to let you in?"
and you caught by your foot, which you had struck through the house door." "I remember it all," shouted Pinocchio. "Tell me quickly, my beautiful little snail, where have you left my good fairy? What is she doing? Has she forgiven me? Does she still remember me? Does she still wish me well? Is she far from here? Can I go and see her?" To all these rapid, breathless questions, the snail replied in her usual phlegmatic manner, "My dear Pinocchio, the poor fairy is lying in bed at hospital." "At the hospital?" "It is only too true. Overtaken by 1,000 misfortunes, she has fallen seriously ill, and she has not even enough to buy herself a mouthful of bread." "Is it really so? Oh, what sorrow you have given me! Oh, poor fairy, poor fairy, poor fairy! If I had 1,000,000, I would run and carry it to her. But I only have 40 pence. Here they are. I was going to buy a new coat. Take them, snail, and carry them at once to my good fairy." "And your new coat?" "What matters my new coat? I would sell even these rags that I have got on to be able to help her. Go, snail, and be quick, and in 2 days return to this place, for I hope I shall then be able to give you some more money for the fairy." The snail, contrary to her usual habits, began to run like a lizard in a hot August sun. That evening, Pinocchio, instead of going to bed at 10 o'clock, sat up till midnight, and instead of making 8 baskets of rushes, he made 16. Then he went to bed and fell asleep, and while he slept, he thought that he saw the fairy smiling and beautiful, who, after having kissed him, said to him, "Well done, Pinocchio. To reward you for your good heart, I will forgive you for all that is past. Boys who minister tenderly to their parents are deserving of great praise and affection. Try and do better in the future, and you will always be happy." At this moment his dream ended, and Pinocchio opened his eyes and awoke. But imagine his astonishment. On waking up, he discovered... What do you think he discovered? That he was no longer a puppet, but he had become instead a little boy, like all the other boys. He had a glance round the room and saw that the straw walls of the hut had disappeared, and that he was in a pretty little room, furnished and arranged with such simplicity that it was almost elegant. Jumping out of bed, he found a new suit of clothes ready for him, a new cap and a pair of leather boots that fitted him beautifully. He was hardly dressed when he naturally put his hands in his pockets and pulled out a little ivory purse on which these words were written: "The fairy with the blue hair returns the 40 pence to her dear Pinocchio and thanks him for his good heart." He opened the purse, and instead of 40 copper pennies, he saw 40 shining gold pieces, fresh from the mint. He then went and looked at himself in the glass, and he thought he was actually looking at someone else, for he no longer saw the usual reflection of a wooden puppet. He was greeted instead by the image of a bright, intelligent boy with chestnut hair,
blue eyes, and looking as happy and joyful as if it were the Easter holidays. In the midst of all these wonderings succeeding each other, Pinocchio felt quite bewildered, and he could not tell if he was really awake or if he was dreaming with his eyes open. What do you think? Do you think he was dreaming? "Where can my papa be?" he exclaimed suddenly. And going into the next room, he found old Geppetto quite well, lively and in good humour, just as he had been formerly. He had already resumed his trade of wood carving and was designing a rich and beautiful frame of leaves, flowers, and the heads of animals. "Satisfy my curiosity, dear papa," said Pinocchio, throwing his arms around his neck and covering him with kisses. "How can this sudden change be accounted for?" "This sudden change in our home is all your doing," answered Geppetto. "How am I doing?" "Because when the boys who have behaved badly turn over a new leaf and become good, they have the power of bringing content and happiness to all their families." Pinocchio said to himself with great complacency, "How ridiculous I was when I was a puppet. I am so glad that I have become a well-behaved little boy."